Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge we are in Treaty One territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Inuit, Cree, and Dakota peoples, and the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty Three territory. I'd like to introduce the panel this afternoon via Zoom. We have Valerie Verhun and Kevin Stephenson. Myself, I'll be sitting as chair today. My name is Mike Colitruglio. Joining me as administrative personnel this afternoon is Fran Picotto, and from the assessment department, Ms. Pilar and Mr. Rattan. To the Zoom participants of this hearing, please note you are placed in the waiting room until your property is called upon. When it is your turn, you will be admitted into the meeting. Kindly follow along the City of Winnipeg's Board Revision YouTube channel for the hearing process. Once the host admits you into the hearing, please close or mute your YouTube player. You will then be permitted to speak with respect to your property. Once your hearing is concluded, you can leave the meeting. You'll be hearing application for revision of the assessment rule in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested has been described in each application and will limit discussion to those matters. Statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by council and is independent of it and city administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note the board's decision with respect to an application may be appealed the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if matter pertains to application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have the opportunity to surmise if they wish. Once all evidence about the application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You'll receive the board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and be part of the public record. We will be hearing items 1 through 5 on our docket today. Ms. Picotto, please affirm the assessors and the applicant's testimony, please.
Madam Assessor, please stand. Please state your full name.
Pradeep Kaur.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the
Yes,
truth?
I did.
Thank you. Mr. Assessor, please state your full name.
Abhishek Rathod.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Applicant, please state your full name.
My name is Stephen Charlebois Page.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, all. As I said earlier, we are here to hear the first one on the docket, being 1599 St. Mary's Road. So I'm not sure, Ms. Pilar,
Yes.
please go ahead. Let's have your
Okay, so the file number 243396, roll number 0800507740. Address is 1599 St. Mary's Road. The owner is Sisa Limited. Our assessed value of 2025 is based on the reference date of April 1st, 2023 is 1,283,000. This is the medical office clinic and it has a gross floor area 7,000 and the leasable area is 6,900 square feet. And the page number 2, I have the pictures of the subject property. It is located on the intersection of St. Mary and Greenwood Avenue, and the front is facing on the St. Mary's Road. So page number 3 is also the Google review pictures, and on the page number 4, we have the information about the subject property has most recent sale in 2013 of the $1 million. And the page number 5, I have the rent comparables. So my rent comparables has a mean rent is $20.17 and the median is $20.96. So my best comparable for this subject property would be the comparable number 4, which is the 400 Pamina Highway based on effective year built and also the leasable area, which is matching approximately with the subject property. So on the page number 6, I have the income stream. It has a blended rent of $13.57 for 6,900 square feet with the 5.50% of vacancy loss and 3% of expenses, $8 per square feet for the shortfall, and the overall cap rate is 6.45%. Which comes up the value at 1,283,000. Page number 7 has a further breakdown of the income value summary. Then on the page number 11, I have the income and expense measure. And the page number 13 shows that information provided by the owner that there was no tenants in 2022. But if we check our current record, there is a tenant at the name of the Santa Mary Pharmacy and Clinic. So page number 15 through page number 24, I have the pictures of the comparable properties. So that is the end of my brief. Any questions? Thank you.
You might, just if I can interrupt for just a moment. Could you go over the cap rate that was used?
Yep. The cap rate is 6.45%.
Yeah, and where did you rely on for that?
It will be on the page number 8 cap rate. It is in between the office property category, minimum of 5.25 to maximum of 7. It is in between that, according to the city of Winnipeg.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Charlevoix Page, you have a question or questions for the assessor at this point.
I do, Mr. Chair. Thank you. So could I first confirm that the value presented today is a model generated value?
Yes.
Okay. Can I direct everyone's attention? I'm going to jump around a little bit here. I'm going to start on page 5, which is the rent comparables.
Okay.
And maybe actually, you know what? I'll have everyone jump up to page 3 actually really quickly, just to take a visual of the subject property. Okay.
Yep.
So let's just keep that in mind. Little visual comparison exercise. You can see the roof there. You know, this building, and then we'll go down to 5. We'll look at the rent comparables provided, and it appears that you've used a citywide study of medical office tenancies. Is that correct?
Yes.
It appears that you've favored older tenancies, old lease terms. Is that a fair statement given the range of 11 to 2020?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think that it might be troublesome to compare tenancies that are maybe up to 12 years older or out from the valuation date?
I do understand, but that is the best comparables I can find it. And my comparable number 4 has the lease start in 2020 for the 5 years. So which is in between the reference date.
So in your opinion, do you think that it might be beneficial to search other tenancy types in the immediate vicinity rather than use older citywide deals to come up with an analysis?
I do understand your question, but when I am searching for my comparable, I usually focus on office medical building, like the subject properties, office medical clinic.
So my question is framed like this. Functionally, if there's a building next door that's serving as a standalone office, and you have this property here, if you had a vacant 2-story right next door to the subject property on St. Mary's there, do you think that lease deal closer to the valuation date might provide a better look than these comparables provided?
It could be, but as I already told you, I'm only focusing on a medical clinic. My main focus to searching the comparable specifically for the medical clinic. So I'm only paying attention on the medical clinic for searching my comparable.
Okay, so we took note of what the subject property looks like on page 3. Could I have the board and yourself just come down to pages 15 and onward of your brief, and we'll take a quick look visually at these comparables. So I'll give everyone a second to catch up. But on page 15, we have a new office building there. It's the Comp at Lorimer, and it's fit out for surgery. It says there on the ground floor, much nicer property than the subject property. Would you agree with that, Ms. Assessor?
Yep.
Superior, yeah. Okay, 2 is the same. It's the other Comp at Lorimer. And as I scroll down here, I get to Roblin, and the comparable you're relying on, which is a veterinary clinic. So that's page 21. You said this is your best comparable.
Yes.
And it's a animal hospital fit for surgery, emergency surgery on animals. Would you agree that if you were going to go that far from the subject property in terms of proximity, and even go back to 2020, do you not see how other comparables in the immediate vicinity might provide a better evidence of market lease for this property?
That's the best I can do for searching my data. So that's
Okay.
the best comparable, the 400 per meter.
Thank you. And I'll just direct everyone's attention just to finish that exercise. Comp 24, just visually again, when you look at these properties compared to the subject, I think the only thing they have in common is that the city's database has flagged them as medical dental office area. And this will be a repeating sort of concept on this docket, is that I think valuing, and sorry, I'll try and phrase this as a question. I understand this is not my presentation, but I just want to reiterate here. I guess it's your opinion that it's most beneficial for you to keep within that medical dental office tenancy rather than look at comparable office or standalone retail in the immediate vicinity. Is that's a fair statement given what you've put forward?
Yes, because we are comparing office medical clinic with office medical clinic, not with the retail, according to our custom.
And did you have a chance to review the pictures in my brief?
In your brief?
Or inspect the property yourself? I just to give you an idea of what the interior of the
For
building
this
looks like.
particular property, I have not inspected myself, but
Yeah.
somebody from the assessment department had inspection in 2023, April 14.
Was it vacant at the time?
They had one one tenant there, which is Saint Mary Pharmacy and Clinic, and the rest of the storage area, I think, or the 4,100 square foot of the leasable area. Out of that is vacant,
Yeah.
but 2,800 was occupied by that clinic and pharmacy.
All right. So you're aware of the vacancy. Do you know how long the subject property has had vacancy issues?
I'm not sure about that.
Okay. So it's an extended period of vacancy. You had mentioned that second floor vacancy. It's been vacant since the owner bought this in 2014, and not for lack of effort. He has had professional agents try to lease and list the space. So Given the fact that the second floor area that you highlighted has been vacant, and now that you know that it's been vacant for that long, do you think it's appropriate to apply the 5.50% market allowance in this case?
That vacancy loss is applied by the mass appraisal system, not by somebody manually. So
Okay.
it's based on all the comparable data, the income and expense measure we receive usually from the property owners. So
Sure.
that is calculated by the system.
But in this case, where you've had a chance to review the property's value independently of the model, do you think it's fair to say that if the entire second floor is vacant, that the vacancy of the subject property would be north of the 5% or 5.5% allowance provided by the model?
I do sort of partially agree with you, but I am not the expert to apply the vacancy rate on the models, so I can't really comment on it.
Okay, and I'll just have you turn up to the capitalization rate chart. I think it's page
AJ?
8, page 8. Yeah, I think you had said you'd use the suburban B office line. Is that fair?
Yep.
So I just want to note, you guys have the brokerage data in there and a line up top that says, the Winnipeg city study is further supported by that. Is it true that, or I guess in your review of that line item there from Collier, CBRE, and Cushman, would you say that the range of those cap rates is between 6 and 8%?
I do understand the different companies had the studies, but as I'm focusing on the city of Winnipeg study, it is in between 5.25 to 6.75, and our cap rate is 6.45 is falling in between that. Even though it is falling in between Collier's and the other studies as well, it's not like very, very low. It's in between.
Sure, but given the fact that the other market participants, I'll call them, are indicating a range of 6 to 8%, do you think that looking at the visual of the subject property, contemplating that the second story has been vacant, do you think it's fair that the subject property would be at the bottom of that range there, or the lower end at that 6.25?
I do agree with that cap rates generated by our master appraisal system. So I do agree with 6.45 is fair.
Okay, thank you. That's the
Yes.
end of my questions.
Thank you very much. Ms. Verheyen, do you have questions of the assessor?
Most of my questions have been answered. Thank you. So
Thank
I
you
have
very
none.
much. Thank you very much. Mr. Stephenson, questions?
Were your comps all model driven, or did you personally select some of those comps?
So in our comps, we collect the data from all the income and expense mailers. Then we enter into the database, and then it is generated by like the senior staff or assessors,
So they were model
it's not like
generated?
a model driven.
The
we
comps
worked
were
on-
model driven? Okay.
Sorry? Yes.
The comps provided in the report are model driven
No, it's done by manually.
manually? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Those are
No
your
further
questions, sir?
questions.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And just so that I have it clear, when you searched for medical offices, you did not find a lot in the area of the subject, correct?
Not really. No.
Okay. And that's the problem that you're having, is that you don't have a lot of medical offices to draw to in the general area,
Yes.
and that's why you went.
Expand the area of the search.
Those are my questions. Thank you very much. Mr. Charlevoix Page, would you like to give us your presentation at this time?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thanks.
So the subject property is 2-story medical office building built in 1995. Site area is 18,186 square feet. Leasable area of 5,800 square feet. And then there is there's a basement area there. And the current assessment is 1,283,000 in the commercial class. I've chosen to use the income approach to value and set the other two aside. My income value begins with comparables on page 10 there. And I did my best to find medical or medical related office space, but that study will also include office space from various other asset types. And that study there has 14 comps. I've chosen to stay within the Louis Riel neighborhood. And specifically, if we look on there, there's comparables in the immediate vicinity. Median of that data set is 1650. On my top of my next page, I've selected 3 comps in the very immediate vicinity on 1549 St. Mary's that are showing a second floor rent of $11 a square foot. And then I found what basement data I could for similar tenancies. I mean, finished office space, and that's always difficult. I've applied a $5 per square foot rent in this case. So the subject property has been nearly 100% vacant since its inception. The owner has a relation with that business that's in that ground floor. And if you see the inspection photos at the end of my brief, it's my understanding that that space was listed and he was unable to secure tenancies. So this is like what I would describe as a backup plan, if that makes sense. I've only applied a 15% vacancy allowance because I know he has made use of the ground floor. But this property, he bought this with the intent of securing medical tenancies and really sprucing it up, and did not, I think, do a sufficient job in his study, and had found it difficult to secure those tenancies with the help of professional leasing agents. So from there, I've applied an $8 per square foot shortfall, 3% non-recoverable, which is in line with the city of Winnipeg. I've attached a retail and an office cap rate study to this for this docket. And again, I will sort of submit, based on what you'll see from this data set that we have today, these various 5 properties. Basically, if one of these tenants were to move out, if it were to sell at the valuation date, the next tenant that could move in could be a standalone retail business, a standalone office for, this is I don't want to generalize because we have some various properties on here, but predominantly smaller ground floor office space area or mixed retail area. So I've provided both studies just to give an idea of what similar commercial assets are selling for in the city of Winnipeg. The range is, I guess, between 6.5% and 8.5% from our view. The brokers are at 6 to 8%. So I have assigned a 7.25 in this case, given the fact that the owner has struggled to occupy this space, or secure tenants, I should say. And so I'm seeking a value of $855,000 rounded, and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. Questions of the applicant?
Yes, I do have it. So your comparables are like OFS, right, which you're focusing on. So I would like to know more about, if the subject property is office medical clinic, why you're emphasizing on office properties like OFS more.
So again, this is not a specialized medical building. If you look at the pictures in my brief, in my appendix, you'll see the interior of this building. This is not some kind of specialized use property. This could be occupied by a future retail tenant or office tenant. It's so in my opinion, I mean, rather than expand the vicinity to a citywide study or search for comps that are in far superior assets, I'd look to the immediate vicinity for other similar tenancies and what the market transactions for those are, and I'd rely more heavily on those.
Okay. And also you mentioned that the subject property has a finished basement, and we can see the pictures, it is very well done, like finished. So it is leasable according to me. If it is leased on it, so according to your comparable, it will be on $5.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's,
Is it
yeah.
correct?
I would say that's being generous, correct? Yes.
Okay, so you choose the cap rate of 7.25%. If you can explain me which risk factor you accounted for that cap rate,
Well,
the subject property.
the fact that the subject property's been mostly vacant since 2014 would be a big one. The owners struggled to secure tenancies. That would be a large factor. But I think ultimately, you know, what I'm looking for with a building like this. So if the model's dissecting this into a medical office building, there's going to be insufficient sales. So what I think the best case scenario to do in a building like this is to look at the sales of other small commercial assets, and that's going to be your standalone office, small tenancies, your smaller retail. And that, to me, I looked at the brokers range, and I looked at the city of Winnipeg's range, and to me, their cap range that the model is generating is the outlier to the rest of the data set. Altus has reviewed sales of similar properties, both retail and office. The brokers have done the same. We're looking at that range of between 6 and 8.5% is what the rest of the market participants are saying. So I think the city of Winnipeg's range is just a little low, in my opinion. So what I did was I looked at, hey, you know, these commercial properties, what is the capitalization rate being applied to other similar assets? They might have different tenancy types, but those considerations would be things like, you know, we have a large increase in the borrowing rate from the last assessment cycle to the current. I won't drone on about that in all of these appeals before you today, but it's worth noting that you can get a government issued bond at the valuation date at about 4.75, almost 5, I think. So it'd be difficult to say the cap rate should be close to that, given the fact that, you know, an investor could secure government insured investment versus heading into the market for a depreciating asset with tenants. However, to answer your question, to summarize sort of what I've given you in terms of risk factors, most predominantly what I would say is, for me, it's to go and look at what the market data has to show for smaller commercial assets. And from there, that's the best you can do, especially if we're dissecting this as a medical dental office. I don't think there'll be a robust sales analysis.
Okay, thank you. And on the page number 13 of your brief, your income approach summary. So that data you generated from the income and expense mailer, is that correct?
Sorry, could you say that again?
Income approach summary. Your page number 13.
Oh, yes. Yep.
So where from that data comes from? Income and expense mailer provided by the owner of the property?
No, sorry. And that should be spelled out better. Is if you'll indulge me, if you go back up to my income approach, I've applied the $16.50 rent to the main area, 11 to the second, 5 to the basement. I've applied a 15% vacancy allowance as described. Second floor is mostly vacant. $8 shortfall, 3% non-recoverable, and a 725. So to avoid confusion, my reconciliation of value there is the second line from the bottom at 855, and the current assessment is below that at 1,283,000.
Okay, so my main reason for asking this question, so where from that net operating income you get it from?
Sorry?
Net operating income? Where from you get that figures, like from the income and expense mailer?
No.
Attached to the page number 18?
No.
Okay.
It's from the inputs I just provided to you. 1650 to the main floor. It's a calculated income approach based on market comparables.
Okay. So now jump to the page number 18. So
Okay.
that income and expense mailer, if you can confirm me, is not it the post reference date?
Yeah, sorry. Now that I'm looking at that, I that is an error. But I mean, in defense of what that's showing there, it's a zero rent. So I don't think it would be. I didn't rely on this at all in my reconciliation of value.
Yeah, I do understand, but still, if
yeah.
it is post reference material, it's not supposed to be in the brief. It's
Yeah,
accurate according to you.
We can disregard it. My income value is not based on it. So it doesn't have much relevance to the appeal, in my opinion, especially since there's no income being generated at the property.
Yep. So that's not my question. Thank you.
Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Stevenson, questions?
Can you comment how you came into the number of 15% vacancy? Like I realize the building is vacant, but how did you pick that number? Can you just kind of review that for me?
Yeah, so I think in a building like this, where the subject property, where the owners had difficulty leasing it, I know he had moved himself into that ground floor area. I think my number is based on sort of a stabilized idea that the second floor area is predominantly been the vacant portion of the asset. The basement, if he's occupying or storing on the main floor, that would render it kind of impossible to, rent out that basement. So the best answer I can give you is that I stabilized the fact that the second floor has been predominantly vacant and applied an elevated allowance to account for that.
No further questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Verhan, do you have questions?
None at this time, thank you.
Thank you very much. And just for future points, Mr. Charlebois Page, please put a breakdown of your how you've calculated out your rent. So that way we have it very clearly in front of us, sir. Other than that, I have no further questions, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And I would ask at this point if there's any summation that you would like to make,
No.
Ms. Moore, no? And
I'll-
Mr. Charlebois Page?
I'll just provide a brief summary. Yeah, thank you. So in summary, I would just say, based on the photos and based on the review of the property, it's got a poor quality second story. It's been largely vacant. I think the allowance provided by the model has not taken that into consideration. I think an adjustment should be made. Further to that, I think the rent comparables put forward represent what tenancy, what the owner would get for similar tenancies in the immediate vicinity close to the valuation date. And I believe that evidence is stronger than the data provided by the assessor. So thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation, sir. That closes that particular property at this point, so let's move on to the next property. That is 220 Marion Street. So Mr. Rattan, you are up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. File number 24-2243. Applicant Altus Corp Limited, roll number 06075083000. Property address 220 Marion Street. Owners Marion Dental Corporation. The 2025 assessed value based on a reference date of April 1, 2023 is $438,000. It's currently used as a medical center. Moving on to the page 2, I have some photographs of the subject property. It is between Marion and Traverse Avenue. It's in a rectangular shaped lot with the street parking available and back parking available. It is on a heavy traffic route, which with a high exposure to the customers available. Moving on to the page 4, I have a small screenshot of the income and expense mailer. It's an owner occupied property. Moving on to the page 6, I have the income approach used by the city mass appraisal model, showing that the property is leasable, has a leasable area of 1596 square feet, which can be rented out at $17.10, giving it as a potential rent of $27,292. We applied an occupancy loss of 5.5%, an expense rate of 3%, and a shortfall of $8 per square feet. which brings the net operating income to 24,315 square feet. $24,000, $315. We applied a cap rate of 5.5% based on the location of the property. And the value is $438,000. On page 5, I have rent comparables. My rent comparables are based on the model of on the subject property model, which is an office medical clinic. They're expanded as a citywide because of they are expanded throughout the city because of the less comparables in that neighborhood. If we find out the mean and the median of the comparables, it comes around $21. The best comparable would be 1450 McPhillips Street. It's a newer build, but the leases, it is currently, I have the latest lease for 2021, which is leased out for 5 years and 11 months for $20 square feet. It is also on a high traffic route, with a space available, like a lot of parking space available, same as with the subject property. So that is why this is my best comparable. Moving on to the cap rate study on page 8. The cap rate study done by the city based on the data available to them. The cap rate should be between 5.25% to 6.75%. Since there are lower risks associated with the subject property, it's on a low end, which is a 5.45. And moving forward from page number, I should say 10 till 15, I have the income and expense mailers submitted by the owner to the city of Winnipeg. And from page number 16 to the end, I have the pictures of my comparables. If you look at the picture, if you look at the page 24, I have my photographs of my best comparable. It's you can see from the photographs, it has quite a large parking space available. It's next to a credit union, newer built, but has been leased out back in like 2021. So to compute the assessment value for 2025, I would request the board to maintain at $438,000. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions at this point, Mr. Charlotte Page?
Yes, please, Mr. Chair. So first, I'll just confirm that this is a model generated value.
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Could I just ask that everyone follow along with me again? I'm just going to do the same thing. I'd like to look at page 3 of your brief, a picture of the subject property. So just could we have a look at the subject property built in 1988? This is a standalone dental office. We'll scroll down to the assessor's appendix, where his rental comparables are. Just looking at those visually, one of them is in a regionally anchored retail asset. One is a new high-rise medical office fit for surgery. And a couple of these down here are much newer and in superior neighborhoods. Could I ask you, do you think that based on a visual comparison, that the subject property is comparable to these comparables that you've selected?
So I selected them based on their effective year bills and what currently they are used as. So I have a comparable number 3, which is on page number 20 of my appendix.
Yep.
Which was effectively built in 1998. Now, looking at the picture, I couldn't say it's built at 1998, but it is actually built at 1998. So it's an effective year built for 1998. So the picture could be deceptive sometimes.
But in this case, do you think it's deceptive? Because I don't. I think in my opinion, the subject property is inferior to all of these. And in many cases, I would say substantially inferior. Would you not agree with that?
To some extent, yes, the subject property is not in that great shape, but that's not only the factor that was considered when choosing of my comparables.
Okay, thank you. And now I'll just go up again to your cap rate study on page 8. So I think you made it clear that the model has, put out a capitalization rate from the suburban B office set. Is that fair?
Yes.
So I guess to me, it's a little confusing because if the model is okay with producing a cap rate, and you guys are happy with the cap rate that the model's produced for suburban B office, does it concern you that you wouldn't look at comparables closer to the subject property that are more similar, that might have other tenancies? I mean, the model is already doing that for the cap rate. Is that a fair statement?
So the model works out. So how our model works out is we provide all the data to the model, which includes the property types, right? So
Yep.
it's only considering this medical center for 5.45. It has a certain range of data which it includes, and then it makes an analysis. And
So-
according to their analysis, it's around 5.45.
So more what I'm getting at is when these guys conducted their multiple regression analysis, the folks that did this modeling, they included all types of office in suburban B office, right? So what I'm asking is it fit for analysis to have different types of office in a cap rate study, but not fit to look at comparables of other office assets when reviewing a medical office? Do you see that sort of distinction you're making on rental comparisons? You're saying, well, hey, we have to look at medical dental comps. I don't care if we have to go across the city. I don't care if we have to go back to older leases. But then when the capitalization rate's being generated for this asset, you're saying, well, it took in the data and it produced the response. So that's sort of the trouble I'm having with the two concepts.
So in order to clarify on the statement, office medical is part of OFS.
Yes.
Which is an office class, right? So
Correct.
when the cap rate study worked, so they didn't include all kind of offices in the suburban area. And when they did the analysis for office medical clinic, they might have considered only the office medical clinics for calculating their cap rates. It's just categorized into the suburban B category because we don't have a different columns for office medical clinic listed out here.
I would probably suggest, Mr. Cesar, and I don't know this because there's no study produced, but I would probably say there'd be insufficient sales within subcategories to differentiate and complete a multiple regression analysis on subtypes. And that's all speculation because we don't get much more than this summary table. But anyway, we can move on from that line of questioning. So from here, similar to the last property, I think the city's range is low, ranging from 525 to 675. And I look at those broker numbers. I look at the study that Altus has conducted, and I see that range again. Let's call it. But even looking at the city range, so you guys are saying 525 to 675. The subject property is at 5.55. I'm struggling here to see, like, just visually looking at this property, looking at what the asset is this at the bottom end of the range? Because I don't think it is. In your opinion, do you think this should be at the bottom end of the range of suburban B office? Is this one of the nicer assets in suburban B office?
So we don't only look at the physical output of the physical look of the subject property, right? The cap rate considers all the other risk factors that might be involved in the business. It's an owner-occupied property, single tenant. It's a single tenant property right now, which is being owner occupied, generating income, has least amount of risk involved. Because I don't think there are many risks. I can't comment on that, right? Because I haven't spoken to the owner, and it's on a high traffic route, right?
So then I guess
but by your statement, I understand that you're only focusing on the physical outlook of the photographs, and then you're considering the cap rate should be on a higher end. But isn't the cap rate involving all the other risk factors that may be involved with this asset?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
a single tenant. It's, an older building. I guess I would say to you curb appeal is definitely a factor I'm putting in. But when I look at the scope of what suburban Class B office is, this is not an asset I would consider to be in the top end of the range. And maybe you disagree with me. Do you consider this to be? So I guess I'm looking for just a yes or no, right? Like this would be at the bottom end of the range. In your opinion, do you consider this to be an asset that should be in that bottom capitalization rate or at the top end of the range in terms of quality, class, and all those other factors?
Yes, I'm pretty confident that the assessors and the folks who run the model are pretty intelligent and they're doing their great job in a great manner. So I'm pretty confident on the
I appreciate
analysis.
that, and I wouldn't infer that they're not doing their job. The mass appraisal is a tool that we use to value a whole bunch of properties, and this appeal process is something that affords us the privilege of going in and looking in to see, hey, we did this mass appraisal model, and I think the best modelers would tell you, hey, this thing's not going to be perfect once you apply it to hundreds of thousands or millions of properties, depending on your district. So anyway, I was not inferring that they were doing a nefarious deed here. I'm just saying, in my opinion, even if you consider the city's range to be accurate, which is outside of the brokers and the Alta study, I still don't think, looking at this property on page 3, that this is at the top end of suburban Class B office. So I think we disagree there, and that ends my questions.
Thank you very much. Ms. Farhan, do you have questions at this point?
Well, my questions were on the CAP study too, but I think the applicant has asked that. For the assessors, have you inspected this building?
No, I haven't.
Oh, has any assessor inspected it in the past few years?
They might have. I actually don't have the information handy right now with me, so I can't comment on that now.
Okay, thank you. Those are all my questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Stephenson, questions at this point?
No questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I don't think I have questions either at this moment. Thank you. Any final summation, Mr. Rattan?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So,
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I got to get my presentation.
Oh my God, I forgot.
Sorry.
My apologies.
No, it's all good. And then
trying to rush you along, and I don't mean to.
I had to second guess whether I had already made my presentation, and you were right. So anyway, sorry about that.
No worries.
Okay.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Thank you. I'll keep it brief. So the subject property is a single-story dentist office built in 1988. Site area of 4,043 square feet. Leasable area of 1,596. It's got an assessment of 438,000 in the commercial class. I've put forward an income approach in my report. So if you'll join me on page 11 here, my rent comparables are there. I've chosen to stay within the immediate neighborhood of the subject property. I favored lease deals ranging between 2020 and 2022. In this case, there was 2021 to 2022, so a narrow range tighter to the valuation date. The median of that data set, and I'll also note that the subject square foot, or sorry, the square footage of the comparables in the immediate area is tight to the subject property. Comparable 6 there, 129 Marion Street, 129B, I should say, right in the immediate vicinity. So $15 a square foot is what I've applied to the main floor, which is the subject property. 5.5% is the same as the market vacancy for what I've applied. $8 shortfall is the same as the assessed rate. 3% non-recoverable, you'll find that the same as the current assessment. And I've applied a 7.5% cap rate to this. I'm looking at, I've considered both the office and retail capitalization rates I've submitted. I've considered broadly, like I discussed on the first file, the commercial capitalization rate in the city of Winnipeg for transactions of, properties that are similar to the subject property and, life after this dental clinic. If this were a vacant property, the types of tenants, the types of buyers that would be interested in running their business at this facility. And I do not think that this is in the high end of the range. If it was considered in our retail study, I'd consider it at the bottom of standard quality, and I'd consider it as Class B office space. Maybe, it's not a really fair comparison for a Class C or B office, because the high-rise offices that exist in those asset types, that's not going to be a genuine comparison. So I'd note that. All that to say, I've included my income summary on the following page, which is applying that rent reconciled on page 10 or 11 there, and throwing through those inputs that I've included. My reconciliation of value is 283,000 rounded downward. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Any questions at this point?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Applicant, if we move on to page 19, that is the income and expense mailer that you used for this application.
I did not use an income and expense mailer for my application.
So,
This is the most recent one on file. I do see the date, but the expenses aren't considered, and there's no income because it's owner occupied.
okay, and so you agree this is a post-reference material?
Yeah, we can completely set this aside. It has no relevance to my income value.
Okay, and just wanted to see, on page 13, we have an income approach summary that you used,
Correct.
and it shows you have a cap rate of 7.5%. Correct?
Correct. Yep.
Could we know like what kind of factors were factored in, and where did those factors came from if we are not using income and expense mailer for this information?
I think, first of all, it's impossible to use an owner occupied income and expense mailer to calculate a cap rate. There's no income on that. The subject property hasn't transacted, so that's not relevant. But in terms of factors I've considered for a cap rate, I can go into the same. I'll try and do a brief summary of what I just did on the previous file, but rising interest rates leading into the April 1st, 2023 valuation date, the subject age, the business, the immediate comparables in the immediate vicinity. I looked at the sales of both office and retail assets, as I think they're the best suited for comparison for the subject property, given the type of asset that it is and given the type of tenant that could move in should this go vacant. Broadly speaking, I think that everything I've looked at showing me that range of between 6.75 to 8, call it 7 to 8, for that, commercial type property. And given the subject properties, that curb appeal, the profile that the property does have, the year built, I went with a 7.5.
Okay, and if we go on to page 11, you have your comparables, right?
Correct.
So I also see there are like some comparables from the strip mall, like a strip mall, right?
Yeah.
Shouldn't these be ones which have a standalone? Shouldn't these be a standalone comparables?
I think
And why are they actually being used as, since I don't have any photographs of the comparables to compare on, right? So
yeah, you have the address though. You could, if you were prudent, you could find all of those buildings, but I'll go into them anyway. When looking at tenancies for a building like the subject property, I think relying on you guys have said it yourself. Looking for medical office, comps. You guys have gone back in time and gone around the city. So for me, I was looking for comparables in similar size and similar leasable area that have leased up around the valuation date in the immediate area. And yeah, I would say those comps provide a pretty good look if you had a vacant spot on Marion, you know, what you would get for that space.
Thank you. That should be all.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Ms. Burhan, do you have questions at this point?
None, thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Stephenson, questions?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. And just out of curiosity, Mr. Charlebois Page, 1225 St. Mary's Road. That's all, those are strip malls, correct? Retail strips?
Correct.
Okay. Same thing with Britannica?
Yeah, this will be a mix of retail or ground floor office tenancy in the immediate vicinity. So yeah, there'll be retail in there.
You have the same problem the assessor has in that respect, do you not?
For sure. But Mr. Chair, I would say that, you know, driving the comparison between mine and the assessor's analysis, I think if you were going to open a dental practice in this vicinity, you'd be more likely to look at, you know, vacant spaces of a similar size in that vicinity than you would to be, you know, anyway, I just think these comparables in the immediate vicinity, similar leasable area, they're providing a better indication, in my opinion.
Fair, but when I'm looking at your page 11, and again, to be fair, you have one unit there at 129B Marion and 954 that is dragging the median down considerably at this point. Don't you believe?
No, no,
Mr. A bit there.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I would say the median as a measure of central tenancy does the best job at removing outliers. So in looking at what a median would do, if you look at the bottom rent of that data set, the 954 and one of the $18 rents would be tossed out together. And the median's finding the measure of central tenancy that's best, the median does the best job at finding, it's the best measure of central tenancy when a data set has outliers. So the average, if anything, would be more affected by outliers because it contemplates all those, where the median sort of sorts out high and low to find that middle of the data set.
And I appreciate that. Just I'm
Yeah.
an observation that you have one that is considerably lower than the others, and
For sure.
does help to skew it to some degree.
But I
I
think, oh, sorry. Could I just say that if I felt that, or sorry, if you felt that, you know, that 954 was skewing that data set, I think we'd see more of a delta between the average and the median. The fact that those are tight tells me that, you know, within there, that's giving a genuine look at least what I consider the best comparables in terms of those smaller comps for the reasons I've already given. So I just provide that context.
Fair enough, and I appreciate the fact that sometimes the data isn't always going to be perfect, so
Yep.
forward what you can at that point.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. I think now I can ask for a final summation on this. Mr. Rattan, question, or sorry, summations?
Yes, please. So I would like to request the board to confirm the 2025 value of $438,000. According to us, it's fair, equitable, based on the mass appraisal model that was produced by our assessors. And that should be all.
Thank you very much. Mr. Charlebois Page.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I will.
Again, my apologies.
No, I'm not slighted at all. It happens to the best of us. So in summary, I would just say that the assessment authorities applied what I'd consider to be a slightly aggressive rent. I think they have $17 a square foot on there right now. My comps are showing 15. The capitalization rate applied by the assessment authority would put it at the bottom of even their range, which is outside, which I consider to be on the low end of the rest of the market evidence. The Bank of Canada borrowing rate rising into that April 1st, 2023 valuation date Reviewing the picture again, I just want to say this is a modest dental office. And in my opinion, it has no business being at the bottom of any cap rate range. It appears just to be an inconsistency in the model. And I would just ask the board to consider the other evidence and look at this property and to assign a reasonable cap rate given the visual, the profile of the property. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes item number 2 on our docket this afternoon. We can now move on to item 3. That being 344 Marion. So back to you.
Number, I will be raised.
Oh, all right. Mr. Rattan, one more time, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. File number 24-2117. Roll number 060804740000. Property address 344 Marion Street. Property owner SAS Investment Inc. The 2025 assessment value based on a reference date of April 1, 2023 is $446,000. It's an office medical clinic. Moving on to page 2, I have some photographs of the subject property. That's on the intersection of Enfield Crescent and Marion Street. That's a rectangular size shaped lot. Again, with an access from the Marion Street and Enfield as a back parking. Moving on to the page 4, I have a small photograph of the income and expense mailer that was provided to City of Winnipeg. The property is leased out with a month. The main floor is leased out on a monthly rent of $5,079, and it's a gross lease as per them. They did not highlight net lease. The basement is leased out on a $1,760 monthly rent. Moving on to the page 6, I have the income approach that is used by the City of Winnipeg Assessment Department. We have a blended rate of rent of $14.25. Or if individually we assessed it, the main floor at $16.21, and basement unit has a storage mezzanine space for $9.37. We applied a vacancy loss of 5.5% with an expense rate of 3%, a shortfall of $8 per square feet. This brings our net operating income to $26,517. We applied a 5.95 cap rate, which brings the market value, estimated value at $446,000. Moving on to page 5, I have the list of comparables. These comparables are citywide comparables. The mean and the median of the comparables of my rent comparable comes at $17.33 and median at $16.23. Which is higher than the subject property blended rent rate. The cap rate is based on page number 8. The study provided the table and the study provided by City of Winnipeg. It falls within the range of 5.25 to 6.75. Moving on to from page 9 to page 15, I have the income and expense mailer that was submitted by the property owner / president. As per the income and expense mailer on page number 13, we don't see if there is no indication of any capital cost incurred by the property owners in that particular before the reference deed. Moving on to from pages 16 till pages 24, I have the photographs of my rent comparables. And to conclude my presentation, I would ask the board to confirm the 2025 assessment value at $446,000. Thank you.
Thank you very much. questions, Mr. Charlotte Page?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes. So again, I'll confirm that the value presented today is a model generated value.
Yes,
This property's eerily similar to our previous sort of same property. Very similar, immediate vicinity. Different rent comparables, and I'll get into that. But could I just confirm with you again that the subject property, just based on a visual, you have it on page 3. When you look at that in your comparable one on Lorimer, would you say that the subject property is inferior to that property?
the comparable number 1 is inferior, yes.
Sorry, the subject property is
It's superior,
inferior.
sorry.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Okay, so taking you back up to your rent comparables, I'll just make this quick because this is a similar theme, similar data set. All older lease deals here, nothing after 2020, back to 2010 in the one case there. Is it fair to say you didn't consider other tenancies? You looked specifically at medical and dental, you went citywide, and you went older. Is that a fair statement?
Yes,
Okay. Is it fair also to sort of say that if we took Lorimer, which I'd consider to be an outlier out of this set, if we took it out of that, you're coming in eerily similar to that $15 a square foot, I think without that comp in there, we're relatively close. I'll move on from that, the rent, but I'll move to the cap because this one's got a 5.95 on it, and it's several doors down from the property we just did. I'll just ask you. I think this came from the Suburban B office on your chart on page 8. Is that fair?
yes,
Okay. So again, in looking at the subject property and in your review of the valuation of the subject property, would you say that you're comfortable with the subject property ranging down on the south side of 6 in terms of a cap rate?
yes.
Okay. And so I guess it's your opinion is it your opinion that a standalone dental office built in 1957 belongs at the bottom of that range?
According to me, yes, looking at the photographs of the subject property, I would say 5.95 is a good cap rate.
Okay.
It's on the business also because it's a medical clinic, so it doesn't include that many risks. But right now I'm only looking at the physical condition. I would say like 5.95% as a good cap rate.
Okay, so and then we'll agree to disagree. I do not think this asset belongs in the bottom end of the range of Class B office, or if you look at it from a retail perspective, if you look at it from a commercial perspective, I disagree that I don't believe this belongs in the top end of the quality range or in the bottom end of the cap rate range. So thank you. That concludes my questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Stebbins, some questions at this point?
No questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Braun, have any questions?
None, thank you.
Thank you very much. And I have no questions. Thank you, Mr. Braun. Mr. Charlotte Page.
All right.
Let's hear from your perspective this afternoon, please.
Yes, here we go. So we've got a single-story dental office built in 1957, site area of 4,564 square feet, leasable area 2,100. Current assessments 446,000 in the commercial class. I've set aside the other two approaches to value, and I've gone with an income approach. My income approach starts on page 11. I've reviewed the same data set as the last appeal. It's just down the street. These are tenancies we've already discussed. Basement study is the same. I've applied a $15 per square foot rent and to the main floor and $5.45 to the basement. I don't think this is I think the current assessment is at 1671 as a weighted. And my market vacancy allowance is the same as the current assessment. The shortfall at $8 a square foot is the same, 3% non-recoverable as the model is put out. The difference here, again, will be with the capitalization rate. And for all the reasons discussed previous, increased borrowing rate going into the valuation date, age of the property, asset type, I look to that 6 to 8% range for commercial properties. And then I look at this property and I think to myself, this has no business being in the top end of the quality range or the bottom end of the capitalization rate range. So going down to the next page, my reconciliation of value is I put the wrong number in. There's an error there. It should be 302,000 rounded downward. So thank you. That concludes my presentation.
Just as a point of interest, Mr. Charles, page 302,641 would round up to 303,000.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Chair. In my experience doing assessment, I have always generated a value and rounded down to the nearest figure. And I can't explain why, but since I went to school for this and came out and have worked on both the public and the private side, that has always been my practice. And I cannot tell you the origin of that. So if that's incorrect, I apologize.
I can only tell you the practice that we have here. And
yes.
That number to me would be 303,000. So please forgive me, but I'm going to consider it 303.
That's fair, Mr. Chair.
Questions, Mr. Rattan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we have so you mentioned the comparables on page 11, is that right?
Sorry, I'll just get there. Yep.
The similar thing they are in the retail sectors, I'm guessing?
Yeah, they'll be mixed. So if they're in a retail asset, I've looked for tenancies that are sort of like office, and you'll see like even in your comps, I noted that, you know, the ones in the regional retail assets, sometimes you get physio, dental, you know, lots of stuff that's, I guess, peripheral medical that will head into those types of assets. So I've tried to prioritize, I guess, not in a perfect world, they're not all medical, but office tenancies, even if they're within a retail asset.
And as pointed out by Mr. Chair in the previous presentation, we have one with $9.54 and one of the comparables.
Yeah.
Which will be decreasing our average, I should say, and our median too.
It won't decrease your median. Sorry.
Won't there be
it won't directly affect the median. If it was $12, it would be the same median, right? You could change that number to anything at the bottom half of the range and the median wouldn't shift. I mean, it's also a rent on Marion that's arm's length. So I don't think it belongs thrown from the data set. It requires consideration, but it ultimately does not require it to be, you know, more weight assigned to it. I've gone to the median of that data set. And I think, again, I answered that in the last one. If the delta between the median and the average is tight, that'll speak to the fact that outliers are not pulling anything away from the measure of central tenancy.
And I'm also looking at your basement area comparables. I see that one of the property has been leased at $8 and the another one is at like $4. What is the main reason behind it?
I think the main reason is that typically landlords don't even get value out of their basement. It's hard to find that. Most of the times a prime main floor rent with a building with an office, you'd pay the rent on the main floor and you would get inclusive of the space in the basement. It's likely like many of these tenancies, many of these assets that have basements, once you occupy that main floor, it's not reasonable or feasible to rent out the basement. So for this exercise, I did the best I could to find lease deals where they've stipulated what they're paying for a basement rent. And that was the data set that I put forward.
Right, that should be all, sorry, this last one more question. I was actually reviewing the income and expense meter that you posted on your brief.
Yep.
And I guess it is also listed for December 31st, 2022 again.
So I'm going to maybe address this for all of them. And so the subject property in this case is owner occupied. The owner has a relation with the two tenants in the building, like the business is related. So I wouldn't rely on this at all. And typically, this is an administrative error on my end. Is typically I put in this mailer in support of compliance, and I can see in this case I've put the one 8 months post reference. It should be the 2022 mailer in here. It really is only speaking to the fact that the owner is compliant in supplying these. I did not rely on any of these in my reconciliation of value. So just to make that clear, that is an error on my end. It's mostly just to supply the assessor and the board with context in regards to compliance. This hasn't been used. The owner has a relation with the businesses that currently occupy that property. In my opinion, the market evidence found in those comps is the best indicator of value. And yeah, just to provide.
So, but you also mentioned that this is an owner occupied property just beforehand, for like 2 minutes. Is it like a proper owner occupied property, or is it like a rented out property? Because as per our records, it's leased out.
So if you go up to page 11, if you go up to page 11, if you'll read the paragraph under page 11, right there at the top, in my report, it speaks to the deal is not being arm's length. The owner has a relationship with both businesses. So for providing the board with, I guess, context for what a market rent would be, I wouldn't use gross rents and try and net them down unless I had the correct information to net them down. And B, the relationship between the owner and those businesses that occupy it mean that the inputs in any sort of rental data are not fit for comparison for this purpose.
So I've actually gone through the paragraph, and I found out it says a statement saying they are encrypted for personal tax purposes only. Is that correct?
That's my understanding. Yes.
So if we go by this statement, won't this affect the mass appraisal model, because we use those income and expense meters to generate our rents? So shouldn't this information be a true statement provided by the property owners and managers instead of like using them for tax purposes, because the model and the valuation can be affected?
I can't speak to the income and expense mailers because I don't fill them out. But what I would say is that it's common practice for business owners to impute rents on their property for purposes of running their business. So all I was making with that sentence is that they shouldn't be considered for a market value, and that the comparables below are the best indication. So don't take any of that too serious. That's my opinion of what those rents are. That's my perception of what they are. They're gross rents. They're old deals. They wouldn't be fit for comparison if they were arm's length. It's my understanding that they're not. So I relied on the comparables in those charts. In fact, like I said, if you toss Lorimer from your set, we're about bang on from my $15. I think yours would be low 15 as well. So
Thank you very much. Ms. Rohan, any questions at this point?
None, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stephenson. You're muted, sir.
No questions, thank you.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Schonfeld Page, I just trying to explore this a little bit further.
Yeah.
When I look at the mailer that's in the assessor's brief, it's more complete than the one that you had provided, sir. It says on page 12 of his document, and only going back to it because on a statement you make saying it's owner occupied, or you believe it's owner occupied, or related parties, correct?
Yeah, it's my understanding, and I could be wrong, but it's my understanding that based on a note I had read, that he is related to those businesses.
Okay, so I just see on page 12 of the assessor's brief that they've checked off partially owner occupied, partially. So
Yes.
it appears that the owner, may be running probably the dentist office upstairs. And then has some sort of relation with the basement tenant, I'm guessing.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I can't speak fulsomely to that relationship.
I'm just pointing it
Yes,
out.
yes. But Mr. Chair, ultimately, I would say this, that regardless of that, we got a 2017 and 2018 gross rent in the building. Regardless of that relationship, I would say the net leases provided in the immediate area would give us a much clearer indication for market value.
Okay.
And that'd be my position.
Yeah,
So,
I appreciate where you're coming from, sir. I really do.
yeah,
A little bit, I'm just gonna go down that rabbit hole a little bit further.
okay,
When I look at the tenant in the basement of the 600 square feet that's down there,
yep,
it shows as Trident Dental Labs, I'm guessing is what that says there. Seeing that it's a dental lab, this isn't your basic, it's a little bit better than just storage, obviously. Would you not think then the rate per square foot should be a bit higher based on that, sir?
again, I haven't had the opportunity to inspect it, but again, what I'd say is with a property like this, I think that the prime rent assigned to a ground floor area would typically include that or have some relation where, you know, access wouldn't be, I guess, feasible to another business, to my understanding. So I could agree with you that in a typical case of an unfinished basement, this would without inspecting and knowing that there's that tenant down there, I would say yes, it would be superior. But the three comps I've provided are finished basements, so that's the best indication I could find.
Fair enough. I appreciate your time and presentation on this. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any final comments? Mr. Richmond?
Yes, please. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, again, to conclude, I would request the board to maintain the assessment value of $446,000. As indicated by the applicant, the income and expense mailer information cannot be fully relied on. Because they, as per their understanding, it is only filled for tax purposes. But again, I would like to bring this to the board members' attention that we use this information to run our model and to generate cap rates, income and our table rents. So if that information isn't supplied appropriately by all the property owners and managers thinking it's for tax purposes, we cannot perform our job well. That's all my statement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any final thoughts, Mr. Charlebois Page?
Yes, Mr. Chair. First, I'll just comment on that. The sheet on page 12 of the assessor's brief is marked as partially owner occupied. They've indicated that there's a relation there. So moving forward from that, I appreciate that the assessor's trying to talk about the key inputs and I'm with him. Good inputs make a good model. But that sheet right there, the fact that it says partially owner occupied, if no one's further investigated those deals, that's an indictment on the investigation and not the owner who's checked that box off. In summary to the property, I'm just going to say we've got 1710 a square foot on this property. The market comps that I looked at show 15. I've looked in the immediate vicinity. In my opinion, the assessor's rental analysis is not fit for comparison. The deals are all old. They're not in the immediate area. They're in many cases superior comps. I think in all cases, in this case, in superior properties. This is a modest dentist office again, and in my opinion, has no business being valued at 595 on the cap rate. It appears to be an inconsistency in the model. The brokers and the Alta studies that are attached would show this as a clear outlier. I don't think this property, have a look at it again visually, is at the bottom end of the range or the top end of the bottom end of the cap range or the top end of the quality range. And in terms of inconsistencies in the model, I think you can see the similar tendency, and this is not an equity comparison, but in terms of this model spitting out cap rates, you are seeing a same tenancy a couple blocks away and very various results. So I don't think either are reflective of market. And in a review of the Alta study and the brokers and the ranges they've put forward, I think the capitalization rate requires adjustment. So my reconciliation of value is 303, Mr. Chair, as you pointed out, that rounding. And that concludes my presentation. And thank you.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. That concludes item number 3 on our document. I'd like to move on to the 4th item. With that being number 5, St. Anne's Road. So, Ms. Pawar, would you please go through your submission this afternoon?
Yeah, so the file number 242630, roll number 080004400500. Address is 5 St. Anne's Road. The owner is the number company. 2025 assessed value is based on the reference date of April 1st, 2023 is 788,000. Subject property is a medical office clinic. And on the page number 2, I have the pictures of the subject property. It's front facing St. Anne's Road and it has a parking at the back. And the side street is Blenheim Avenue. Page number 3 has a picture of the subject property from the front. And the page number 4 shows subject property has no sales history. And currently there are 4 tenants according to the income and expense mailer we received. And all the leases are gross leases. And the page number 5, I have the 5 set of comparables. Out of that, I would like to say the comparable number 4 and 5 is my best comparable for the subject property based on the effective year build and the leasable area. My mean rent is 2259 and the median is 2143. And the page number 6 shows that income stream of OFS. As most of the tenants are mixed, like one is the accountant, few of them are a dental, and some are the vacant space. And so that our blended rent is $16.27 for the subject property. With the vacancy loss of 6% and the expense at 3%, shortfall of $8 per square foot, and the overall cap rate is 5.35, which generate the estimated value of 788,000. And the page number 7 has a further breakdown of the income value summary. And the page number 8 has a capitalization rate, and the subject property has a cap rate of 5.35%. Which is falling in between the office Boardroom B of the city of Winnipeg between 5.25 to 6.75. And it is for our cap rate is falling on the 20th percentile of the Boardroom B. On the page number 11 has the income and expense mailer where they mention the subject property is partially owner occupied. And they also have 4 tenants. On the page number 13. And the page number 15 through 23, the pictures are the pictures of my rent comparables. So at the end of the presentation, I would like board to maintain the value of 2025 to 788,000. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, may I proceed?
Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
please go ahead.
Sorry, she asked, so I jumped in.
No, you're-
I didn't mean to
Go
bypass you.
right ahead.
Maybe it was payback for earlier. I bypassed you. No, I'm just kidding. So again, I'll just confirm with you, Madam Assessor, this is model generated value presented today.
Yes.
Okay. I won't spend long, but I do want to look at the rent comparables again. Visually, the subject property, these comparables, would you consider all of these comparables to be superior to the subject property?
I would like to say not all of them, only the 1 and 2 comparable could be the superior to the subject property. According to your conversation with the last docket, I would like to say if even you exclude that Lorimer Boulevard, still our mean rent will be $19.97 for the 3, 4, and 5 comparables.
So could I just confirm with you that you think that comparable number 3, if you look on page 19, Concordia Health Associates and a large Shoppers Drug Mart, you think that is comparable or inferior to the subject property?
Yeah, that is superior to the subject property, but my best comparables are the comparable number 4 and 5.
Okay, so okay, and now could I just address you back to that chart on page 5? The start date of comparables 4 and 5, are they 2015 and 2018? Is that correct?
Yes.
Do you think anything substantial has changed in the office market since 2015 to April 1st, 2023?
Yeah, there could be, but that's the best comparables and the best leases I can find out from our database system. So I tried my best.
Okay, so you would agree, though, the pandemic, the work from home market, the the high interest rate market following the pandemic would have an impact potentially on this asset type from 2015 to now?
I do understand. I do agree with your statement, but if we are just only focusing on the lease start date of 2015 and the comparable number 5 was leased at $20.50 before pandemic. So according to me, that is the rent generated by our system is fair at $16.27.
Okay, well, agree to disagree. I think that's a completely separate market, and it's 8 and a bit years old. But I'll move on and head to the cap rate portion of this. Again, you've said that it comes from the Suburban B office cap rate line there. I'll say again, the broker's range 6 to 8 there. Alta studies similar in line with that. Your guys on the bottom end of that 525 to 675. This subject property has a 5.35% capitalization rate. Again, in your opinion, based on all of the factors you would consider in a cap rate study and in deriving a cap rate, do you think that if you look at this property on page 3, do you think this belongs in the top end of the quality range and the bottom end of the capitalization rate range?
For the cap rate, I will first our system, the mass appraisal system, which is generated by the mass appraisal system. So I would like to say it is calculated fair.
Okay, so I think that mass appraisal is a wonderful tool that makes mistakes, and I've only had the pleasure of running small multiple regression analysis, and I appreciate how hard of a task that is. But in this case, we'll agree to disagree. I'm seeing this at the bottom end. This is a modest asset, and I'm looking at commercial caps in this vicinity ranging between 6 and 8. So we'll agree to disagree on that point. I think the 535 is low. So thank you. That concludes my questioning, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Burhan, do you have any questions at this point? Sorry.
Well, it's to do with the cap rate too. I'm looking at this building, and this is the lowest cap rate that the city has used today. I would just like more, like something else to justify that. It's the lowest one that they've put out there. So I'd like to know why it's lower than all the rest of the properties that we have heard today.
Yeah, because that cap rate is generated by a model, so I can't really know what could be the reason behind it. Usually cap rate is calculated based on how risky the property is. If it is a less risk, then the cap rate will be less, right? So if I'm seeing that subject property is in very good area, the St. Anne's Road in the St. Vital area. So that is high traffic area, and also the condition of the building, according to our database, has a high quality finish mostly because the dental offices need a superior kind of finish. So based on that, I don't think so this subject property has any vacancy loss. So based on that, the cap rate is fair, although it is in the low end, but it is still falling in between city of Winnipeg studies.
Okay, I understand that and I thank you for that. But have you been in this building?
I have not been in this building, but I checked the notice. The inspection was offered in 2018 or 2019, but the owner declined.
Okay, so you don't really know what the condition of this building is then?
The current condition, I would like to say no, I don't know.
Okay, so you can't really, because you did make a statement that said that it was, the condition was good because it was I believe a dental office?
Yeah, because
So
it is-
you're assuming it's in good condition?
If you see the page number 6, the tenant class, we have the classification of all the tenant class. If it is mentioned high quality finish, so based on that information, I'm commenting.
I see, but you don't have any evidence to show that?
Not ma'am.
Okay, that's all my questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Mr. Stebbins, some questions?
No questions at this time, thank you.
Thank you. And I have no questions either at this moment. Thank you. Mr. Charles Page, would you like to go through your presentation now, please?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. So this is a suburban office building with no basement, and it was constructed in 1980. Site area of 5732 square feet, leasable area of 2970 square feet. Current assessment is 788,000 in the commercial class. I've conducted an income value that's on page 13, or sorry, starts on page 13. So the subject is leased out to 4 tenants currently, and the rents range from 12 to 15 bucks. So in my review of the subject property as it currently stands, I reviewed rents in the immediate vicinity. These would be other office type tenancies, a variety of assets in the Louis Riel region. And that asset showed $14.29 a square foot, which is in line with the rents the subject property is getting. I applied a 6% vacancy allowance, which is in line with the current assessment. The $8 per square foot would also be in line with the current assessment. 3% non-recoverable, in line with the current assessment. And the place we will differentiate again is the capitalization rate. I've chosen 7.5% for the reasons I've stated previously. All of those factors and me looking at what the typical commercial range is for a capitalization rate as of April 1st, 2023, considering the rise in interest rates, considering this asset is aging and visually matches sort of that area, I've chosen there at the 7.5%. So my value is 513 rounded downward, and that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Laura, do you have any questions of the agent?
Yes, I have a question on page number 13. So there are currently 4 tenants and you calculated the net rent. I would like to know where from that figures comes from the income and expense mailer.
It comes from the 2022 income and expense mailer, and these are the rents in place. It's static over the last 3 years. I think I know what you're getting at. Again, I'd say that the income and expense mailer is attached by accident. It's a compliance related issue. I do apologize for that, but those rents are static to the previous years. And I would just, for your sake and your peace of mind and the board's peace of mind, my study on the next page is in consideration of reviewing the market to see if those rents are reflective. So, yeah.
Okay, that's all my questions. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Mr. Stebbins, some questions?
No questions at this time, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Verhun, do you have questions at this point?
I do not, thank you.
Thank you. And I don't have any further questions either. So thank you again both for your presentation. Do you have a summation that you'd like to make at this time, Ms. Moore?
No.
No? Mr. Charles Page, would you like to make a quick summation?
Please, and I'll keep it brief. So this property here, again, predominantly, I've looked at the actual rents in place, the market rents for other similar comparables. That's slightly down from the 1627, the weighted rent that's applied. I have it at 1475. Predominantly, the issue here is the capitalization rate again. Excuse me. I do not believe this belongs at the high end of the quality range or at the bottom end of the capitalization rate range. I also think the range of the Winnipeg model is low, given the other contributors in the market, the other participants are all indicating sort of that 6 to 8.5 range. This is a modest medical office, and visually it'll show that, performance it'll show that, and it, in my opinion, it does not warrant a 5.35% capitalization rate. I believe that's an inconsistency, and I think it's an outlier. So that concludes my evidence. Thank you. Or my summary. Sorry.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, this concludes item number 4 in our docket this afternoon. We can now move on to the final item, which is 227 Provencher Boulevard. And who is up on this? Mr. Rattan, please give us your presentation on this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. File number 24-2811. Roll number 060934602330. Property address 227 Provencher Boulevard. Property owners, it's a numbered company 6484442 Manitoba Limited. The 2025 assessed value based on a reference date of April 1, 2023 is $1,559,000. It's currently marked as a medical center. It is a heritage building on an intersection of Rue Langview and Rue Demelin. Previously, it was an police station or police headquarters, I should say. Moving on to the page 7, we use income approach to value this property. We have a 13,490 square feet of area, which was assessed at $9.82, and we have a storage space for $8,000 square feet for a $7.30 rate. We applied a vacancy loss of 15% based on the condition of the property, the way it's structured out, and its heritage status. We have an expense of 3% shortfall of $8 per square feet. This brings a net operating income of $131,741. Keeping all the factors in mind, we applied a cap rate of 8.45%, which brings our estimated value at $1,559,000. On page 6, I have the rent comparables. These comparables are based on medical centers, which are throughout the city. Again, these are not the heritage comparables, so I'm not relying on them to support the net rents. The only thing I would like to bring is, if this property was of a newer age with such a bigger size, this could be leased out for $20 rent. As we can see from my rent comparables, I personally have visited this property because of some open permits, because there were alterations being done in the property. At that time, they were converting the other half of the property to be used as a medical center. At that time, the property was still it was transitioning from jail to a medical center, so I did not include those photographs. And I actually received some emails from the property owner mentioning about how they have been in a huge debt because of this property and the amount of money they have invested in. So I would say that overall cap rate of 8.45% and a vacancy of 15% supports of assessment for this property. So to conclude, I would ask the board members to confirm the 2025 assessment value at $1,559,000. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions, Mr. Charlewell Page?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'll keep it brief. I think I just confirm with you that it's a model generated value.
Yes, it is.
You've kind of indicated the comps you've provided for rents. It's not supportive of the rent that's currently on the assessment, but you know, based on the condition of the building, you've said, you know, those rents are fair, they're below the market. Is that kind of a summary? Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I principally agree with that. Our area of dispute on this file will be the vacancy. So you've indicated it's been vacant since I think since 2014 when it was purchased, or maybe you didn't indicate that, but are you aware that it's been vacant since it was purchased in 2014?
I don't remember the actual years that were mentioned when I was talking to the property owner.
Yeah.
They quite mentioned that this property was vacant for quite a while, and then they decided to do some renovations to change the other half of the property. And that's why they were turning all the jails and the police section of the property into the medical center so that they can use it as a medical center.
Are you aware that they ran into mold and mildew and water damage when they began that process?
No, I'm not.
Okay. You've had a look at the pictures in my brief, or you said you've inspected the property, so you've been out there.
Yes.
So you're aware that this is a former institutional building,
Yes.
and in your opinion, would there be substantial costs in conversion of a property like this to bring it to a modern day market standard?
Yes.
Do you think there'd be legal constraints given the fact that it's a heritage designated property?
I don't know about that.
In my experience, they would. There's limitations, further limitations than a typical market property without a heritage designation. So I would just, you know, that's what I was getting at there. So again, in saying this building's been vacant since 2014, do you think that the 15% provided is appropriate, or do you think that allowance could be increased given the fact that it's sat 100% vacant and the owner is paying the upkeep for all of those years?
I would say the 15% is given each year to reflect the vacancy that the owner has been phasing out. So for now, I think like the percentage we offered is kind of fair and equitable.
So at 9 years. Sorry. So at 9 years, like I understand what you're saying. If it's like 50, 20, 10, 5% vacant, if a property's fluctuating and shooting up, but this property's sitting 100% vacant and the owner's got significant financial issues in going into conversion of a property like this. This is an institutional property, former jailhouse, courthouse. So I guess for me, I would disagree that 15% is satisfactory. But I think the rest of our points of valuation are not far. So that concludes my questions.
Thank you very much. Mr. Stephens, questions at this point?
No questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Rahan, any questions?
None right now, thank you.
And I guess I'm just gonna, so I am completely clear, the rents that you're using compared to what you've shown on your tables are about less than half at that point, correct?
Yes. Yes.
And because of the fact that it's vacant, and was the 15% generated by the model, or is that something that was inputted by someone in your department? Do you
I
know?
wish I have.
Do you know? No.
I actually don't know. I wanted to look for that, but I just missed it before coming to the presentation.
Okay.
I wish I had that information handy.
Fair enough.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
could you repeat that question for me? Sorry, I spaced out and I apologize. I missed your question. I heard the answer. I missed your question.
Yeah, I was asking about if the model generated the percentage vacancy allowance that was used. And just trying to see if in fact someone had made a decision or not and then put that into the system. Just curiosity on my part.
Could I maybe ask a follow-up? to that?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Mr. Assessor, in your experience, is 15% a soft or a hard cap on what you guys would value a vacancy? Maybe I'm not sure if it was yourself, but maybe another assessor has inferred to me in the past that sort of 15% is the top end of the range that the model would input. Is that, am I misspeaking in saying that?
No, that wouldn't be accurate. We can increase the cap rate depending on the vacancy and the history of the property. Again, for this one specifically, I am not 100% sure, was it like a model vacancy used or it was a manual done by somebody? Because I know I saw some of the other properties of the same heritage class where we have manually to enter the vacancy for a higher range to reflect all the vacancies in the previous years, right? So I'm not 100% sure what happened in this case scenario.
Okay, because I have just for color on that, I've had two other heritage properties that are 100% vacant. I think Mr. Assessor, you and myself did one last time, and the 15% was applied to it, and it was another property that was sitting vacant for approximately 9 years, similar to the subject. So anyway, just to add to that, and thank you.
Fair enough. I think that's total of my questions at this point. Go ahead, Mr. Charlebois Page.
Okay, keep this brief. So this property here is the former St. Boniface Police Station and Courthouse. The subject property has a site area of 25,371 square feet and a leasable area broken down as 13,490 main floor, 8,032 basement, for a total of 21,522. The current assessment is 1,559,000 in the commercial class. For the purposes of my report, I pulled comparables in the immediate vicinity from the bottom of the range. Given the pictures, there's lots of pictures of the subject property. I guess I'll just interrupt my presentation, and if the board and the assessor would like, this is from a 2021 inspection. As I understand it, the condition is still similar in the vast majority of the building. I'm unsure about the stuff that the assessor saw. I don't know when he said he was there, but pictures there's a ton of them starting there. I think it's page 18 of my brief. 17 has some exterior photos. So anyway, sorry to jump around, but on page 11, I've chosen comparables from the bottom end of the range. Again, the basement area comparables that I was able to find, I assigned a rent to that space. The areas of variance from myself and the assessor and the model would be in the vacancy allowance and the shortfall. And the shortfall is tied to the vacancy. This building's got 100% vacancy since 2014. The owner has expressed frustration in, I guess the ability to do changes and maybe some holdup in terms of that heritage designation. They found it challenging. They ran into water and mildew damage, as stated in my brief in the property description. Property's been vacant since 2014. For me, I apologize, my dog is barking. I don't know if that's picked up, but the vacancy allowance of 25%, I think that I've applied is fair. I think it's one of those ones where I've increased that vacancy rate. To increase that rate, I think the assessor kind of spoke to this, to increase it into that like 50 or 60 or 75%, I think is disingenuous, and you'd start to flip it onto almost land value. So I think 25% has sort of driven a point where it's taking into consideration the long-term vacancy and the increase in shortfall, simply just to do with the fact that as a property sits vacant like this, there's increased costs that are not recovered because there's no tenants. So the owner gets the privilege of paying those. For my non-recoverable at 3%, it's in line with the assessor. And I think my cap rate at 8.5 is to do with the fact that it'd be at the bottom end of the range. as well as a heritage property, as well as a former institutional property that require, it's quite complex. So I think the current assessment's at 845. I don't think we're differentiating much on that. I'm at the nearest half point. So if you'll scroll down to 14, you'll see my value there. It's 1,127,000 rounded downward. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. Question, Mr. Rattan?
No, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, I just need one redirect question. Mr. Rattan, do you know what the department's maximum vacancy allowance is for buildings in the city of Winnipeg?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chair. It
Yes.
was 25%.
That is the maximum that they normally allow. Thank you.
Just to clarify, if we put 25% vacancy on any of the properties, the income model doesn't work, and so the property value doesn't generate if we do at 25% at the maximum.
Is then reverts to
Land
land.
value.
Is that what the case would be here, sir?
If we do that, yes.
Mr. Chair, I think the contemplation of land value would be a complex one in this way. This property has a heritage designation and would require substantial cost to cure a site. I think it would be disingenuous to put a flat land rate on this property without considerations for that. And that's why I led with the income approach, because I did consider a similar viewpoint, but the balance of all of that would be a substantial cost to the current owner or a market participant. So I just to provide that for context.
No, and I appreciate your thoughts. What I was going to ask you though is with respect to the designation on it. It is to the exterior of that building, correct?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I will not pretend to be an expert in heritage. I will, on this property, there's not a specific grade. And when there's a specific grade, it outlines specific criteria. This designation exists, and I'm not sure the limitations. I just know they are there, and the owner has struggled with them. So I won't try and tell you what they are, because I'm not an expert. I would do that. I wouldn't do that justice. So.
All right, well, I'll come back to some further questions after the panel has had an opportunity to ask. Mr. Stephenson, any questions further?
So you say, when did the medical clinic start operating out of there?
There is no medical clinic in there, I don't believe.
No?
Not as of the valuation date for my records. And I believe the assessment authority still has it as vacant space. Is that not correct?
So we have marked it as vacancy, but upon my inspection, received an email, or I saw some open permits saying there was a completion of work, and one of the co-workers from my team actually went for inspecting that property, but that might be in the post reference. After the post reference, I assume that.
Okay, but in essence, I guess we're answering part of the space has been opened as a medical clinic,
Yes.
as far as you know.
Yes, and I can even if we inspected the property, it's on page number 22.
Sorry, is this still questions for me? I think we're still in questions for me. Have we summarized that? Is this in assessment summary, or are we just feeding off that? Okay.
We're just kind of meandering off of that for a moment.
Sure.
And then the reason being, I think that we're trying to understand if in fact, if there has been medical offices opened up in the meanwhile, stemming from the question from Mr. Stephenson.
Mm-hmm.
So if we go on page number 19
Of the
applicant's brief,
fair.
we see there's a gate, right? You enter through the gate, and then the left side of the left side of the lobby was under construction when I inspected the property, and on the right side, we go and we see on page 22nd, we have a reception area. And I saw there was a lady with a bunch of chairs for waiting as in a waiting area. And as soon as you step out of this reception, you see medical clinics that were like that could be operating at that time, or that was emptied by that time. I didn't see any patient when I was there. But yeah, they were completely done. You can easily rent out those spaces, or a doctor can easily see a patient there.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I don't have those
I think-
information. but-
Mr. Chair, I don't know, I'm sorry, without a date on this material,
And I appreciate where you're going with this. I get that
Yeah.
there's a date that we have, but
That's challenging.
all I'm trying to understand
yeah,
is in fact, if even subsequent to the reference date, if they have if there's some activity going on there, that appear the answer is yes, and so for the moment, that's going to be sufficient for.
but
for
I
what
think
we're-
there's been activity at the site since 2021, right? When they first went in there and then they found mold and mildew. So anyway.
And I'm
so-
sure they've been remediating for a number of years, it appears, so if you
Yeah.
bought this back in 2014, this is a fairly good sized building, you know, with a lot of interesting parts to it through the years, I'm sure.
Yes,
Now requiring significant work, both inside and outside, I'm assuming. To
yeah,
to bring up to whatever standards they're bringing it to.
And
If I
then-
can add, the
Oh,
reason for my question was just because you used net rents for the main floor and the basement for Dr. Frechette in your report, right? So then
Oh,
my
sorry.
question was relating back to, okay, so how long has it been there? I know as a Winnipegger, there's a clinic that's operated out of there. I don't know the date that it started. So hence my question, when did the clinic open? And you have rents showing in your report. So that's where I'm trying to determine
yeah.
how is this vacant or not, right?
Sorry, those are imputed, and that's not based on an actual lease tenancy. That's when we have an owner occupied building. My valuation sheet in that case would have imputed, like the names would be that of those wouldn't be lease deals. So if you look at the rents, Mr. Chair, they correspond to the market rents up ahead, and it's just to assign a rent to a space. That is not to do with an actual arm's length tenancy. So the assessor may have seen something during that inspection. If that inspection is post April 1st, 2023, I think that's great to provide color. But again, I'll finalize that thought and just say, you know, if you're buying this thing April 1st, 2023, you have to know that the current owner has sat on 9 years vacancy. And it sounds like only a portion of the building might be occupied finally. The 25% I'm seeking would be, you know, I think in line with what a market participant would be looking at as of April 1st, 2023, given the extended period of time, the difficulties in remediation, and then the outlook from there. So anyway.
No further questions for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. Ms. Vermund, do you have any further questions?
None, thank you.
And I think I've gone down the rabbit hole enough with the tenancy here at least, or potential tenancy. To your knowledge, Mr. Charlotte Page, the owner of this property is still not concluded all the work and is looking for tenants, or do you know much more than that, sir?
That is from the review leading into the valuation date, and I don't have any additional commentary on those points, so I apologize.
Fair enough. Just was wondering if you knew.
Yeah, I don't, so I am sorry for that.
Okay, no worries. Those are my questions. Any final summation, Mr. Rattan?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So, as mentioned during my presentation, we are accounting for a huge vacancy the property is being facing, and which is being also considered in our vacancy loss of 15% and a cap rate of 8.5%. I would ask the board members to confirm the 2025 assessed value at $1,559,000. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Shalom Page, any final thoughts to summarize?
Yes, thank you. This property's been sitting vacant since 2014. It's a former institutional building. The design and layout would be archaic in a modern rental situation in terms of that context. There's a heritage designation working against it. It requires substantial investment to bring it up to income and investment grade. It should be at the bottom of the range. I think the assessment authority has done a satisfactory job in terms of the cap rate. I think where the delta is not far. The vacancy rate, in my opinion, and the corresponding shortfall should be increased. 25% is a large stabilized figure that's, I think, best describes the owner's experience in terms of owning this property up into the valuation date. And if a buyer was going to look at this from an April 1st, 2023 standpoint, I don't think they would factor in a 15% vacancy in terms of a loss of income. So that concludes my my summary. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I do appreciate your patience this afternoon, and I thank you both for your presentations. I should say all three of you for your presentations. And with that, we have heard all the items scheduled, and this hearing now is adjourned. So again, thank you very much, and good afternoon to all.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.